Hey guys, and welcome to Should You Buy It, where all we do is talk a little bit about the game and whether or not we think it's worth the cost.
In the shadows, monsters thresh, mad with lust for blood and flesh.
In this episode, we'll be playing Monster Hunter Rise, the third-person boss battling co-op game where you and up to 3 friends will have to work together in order to hunt down and defeat a variety of different monsters.
The first question that we always cover in these videos is what stage of development is the game in? And in this case, Monster Hunter Rise is currently in full release and is now available on Switch and PC for $60.
So what exactly is the game? Well, Monster Hunter Rise is the newest installment of the Monster Hunter series, which brings several new mechanics to the franchise. With the game also recently releasing on PC, we will be getting updated graphics for the game.
Now you may have already played the Monster Hunter game series, but before we cover all of the differences that this version brings to the franchise, let's first get everyone up to speed with what Monster Hunter is as a game.
Monster Hunter is an RPG style game where you'll be tasked with hunting down dangerous creatures. These range widely in variety with things like dragons, wyverns, raptors, bears, bunnies, flying tiger T-Rexes, also known as Tigrex, and much more. Monster Hunter uses a mission-based system called hunts. Each time you go on one, you will usually be tasked with taking down one of the game's many creatures, which each have their own loot pools. Upon defeating a monster, it will drop different parts of its body, which can vary based on how and where you damaged it. These parts are then used to craft yourself better armor and weapons in order to take on increasingly difficult bosses.
The game has quite a variety of difficulty for you to play with. These come in the forms of the main questline, which is traditionally one of the easier forms of content, as well as the Gathering Hub, which has monsters intended for 4 players at a time. There are also significantly more difficult monsters as you progress in the Gathering Hub than the ones that you are able to fight in the main storyline. In order to deal with all the difficulty you're going to run into, the game provides players with consumables, better gear, palicos, which are an AI pet cat, Palamutes, which we will get to later, and finally a variety of different weapons to fit your playstyle.
Monster Hunter Rise comes packed with 14 different weapons for you to choose from. Some of these can be extremely difficult, while others are fairly simple to learn. Some examples are the bow, switch axe, charge blade, longsword, dual blades, and the hunting horn. Each of these weapons play significantly different and will require you to defeat bosses in a different way. To give you an example, the bow doesn't really have the best DPS in the game, but because you can attack monsters at range, it gives you a sense of safety compared to the melee weapons such as the dual blades, which require you to be extremely up close and personal with your target.
Monster Hunter Rise also brings several new mechanics to the franchise. Some of the major features include things like the Wirebugs, Palamutes, Wyvern riding, and Rampage mode. The Wirebugs essentially act as a new resource that you can use to move yourself quickly in a single direction. They can also be mixed in with your abilities to do unique effects with each and every weapon. For an example, the bow has a Wirebug attack that propels you into the air and then allows you to shoot volleys of arrows down at your enemies. Each weapon also has their own unique Wirebug moves, which adds a lot of depth to the many different weapons that are within Monster Hunter.
Another major feature is the Palamutes, which are used to cross Rise's rather large biomes. These are dog-like creatures which essentially just act as your mount. They can also fight for you, much like Palicos can in previous installments of Monster Hunter. Personally, their drifting mechanic was super fun, and it gave me some serious Mario Kart vibes while traveling around the map.
The last 2 major mechanics that Monster Hunter Rise brings to the table is the Wyvern riding and the Rampage mode. Wyvern riding is essentially done by doing enough of a certain type of damage to a monster, which will then allow you to mount them and take over their controls for a short period of time. This can be used to either attack another monster with that monster, or it can be used to try and ram the monster into a wall so that it falls over and you can do some juicy damage to it. Rampage mode is essentially a replacement for the giant monster fights of previous games. These act as tower defenses where you can set up NPCs to help you fight off several large monsters at a time. This also allows the player to actually focus on the monster fighting rather than just loading cannons and spamming ballistas all day long, as we all know that's not too fun.
So now let's move over to the pros and cons section for the video. First up for the pros is the Palamutes. There's just something about drifting around corners and flying through the terrain that gives the Palamutes this Mario Kart vibe, which keeps the travel fun and interesting. Everything about them from their mobility to the fact that they will help you fight in battle is an awesome addition. After that are the Wirebugs and the way that they enhance each weapon with different Wirebug attacks. Each weapon has significantly different Wirebug abilities, such as the dual blade spin attack or the switch axe's dash to gain switch gauge faster. Another pro is the Wyvern riding mechanic, as it felt rewarding and not just a waste of time, such as stabbing a monster until it falls over, as we've seen in other games such as Monster Hunter World. Next up for the pros is the Rampage mode, which is a huge improvement on the big siege monster battles from previous games. I don't personally know anyone who enjoyed hitting some giant dragon's back knee until they decided to leave the village. Monster Hunter Rise also brings updated graphics with the PC version of the game. This will allow the graphics to go up to 4K, which makes them stand out compared to the Switch's version of the game. 22 new monsters were also added in Rise, which means more unique fights and mechanics for you to deal with. And finally for the pros is the simple fact that there is going to be new DLC coming out, hopefully by the summer of 2022. This really isn't too far away, and if you do enjoy the franchise, this is just something to look forward to.
Now for the cons. First up is that there is really little to no story in Rise, and while yes there is one, there's just not a lot of depth to it and not a lot of it. Now to be completely fair, Monster Hunter has never really been a story-driven game except for Monster Hunter World, and even then the story is more of a sideshow to the combat and the fights that you partake in. So I'll leave this one up to you whether or not it's actually a con. The second con we have with Rise is that there is no crossplay at the current moment in time. I really hope maybe they consider adding this if they're able to, but at this point in time, you are not able to play with players on the Switch if you're on the PC. I know this is really unfortunate, as many people don't want to spend an extra $60 just to be able to play with their friends that already have it on Switch or already have it on PC.
So now it's time for the rating for the game, and when we rate games, we want to get 1 hour of enjoyment out of every $1 that we spend on the game. So for this game in particular, in Monster Hunter Rise, we would want to get roughly 60 hours of enjoyment out of the $60 that we spent. And after putting over 24 played hours into this game, we give it 9 out of 10 potatoes.
Once again, Capcom has delivered an amazing addition to the franchise with Monster Hunter Rise. There are so many new mechanics added to Rise, and each one adds to the gameplay in a unique and interesting way. The Palamutes added much needed mobility and immersion to the world, while Wirebugs bring depth to each weapon's combat mechanics in its own unique way. Monster Hunter Rise brings a ton of new interesting monsters and many fan favorites that were not included in Monster Hunter World. Even though the game has a bit of a lackluster story and doesn't currently have crossplay, every other aspect of the game was incredibly enjoyable, and therefore we feel it is safe to say that Monster Hunter Rise is definitely worth the cost.
Before you guys go, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe, as we put out multiple new videos every single week, and your support is what makes this all possible. If you would like to support us even further and get some cool benefits, check out our membership program, which can be found in the join button below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.